The night was humid, the kind that makes the air feel heavy and thick. Marcus Green walked down the cracked sidewalk with a duffel bag slung over his shoulder, his old gym shoes thudding softly against the pavement. He had just finished a long shift at the auto shop, and all he wanted was a shower and some peace. His life had gotten smaller since the ring quieter. He liked it that way. No bright lights, no crowds, no pressure. Just work, home, and the occasional evening jog to keep the demons away. But that night, as he turned onto 8th Street, he could feel its eyes on him. He didn't flinch, didn't turn around. Years in the boxing world had taught him to read energy, to feel intent. He knew what it felt like when someone was about to strike. At first, it was just the echo of sneakers behind him. Then a muffled laugh. Then the sharp crack of a bottle breaking somewhere close. Marcus stopped at the corner store, pretending to check his phone, watching the reflection in the glass. 4 men, all young, all dressed in dark hoodies, were closing in from across the street. He sighed softly. Not tonight, he thought. He walked inside the store. The clerk, an older man with thick glasses, nodded politely. "Evening, Marcus." "Evening, Raj. You doing all right?" Marcus asked, grabbing a bottle of water from the fridge. Before Raj could answer, the bell above the door jingled again. The gang walked in, spreading out across the small shop like wolves circling their prey. "Yo, big man," one of them said, grinning. "Nice watch you got there." Marcus looked at the boy. Couldn't have been more than 20. Cocky grin, shaking hands, the false bravado of someone trying to impress his friends. Marcus stayed silent, paid for his water, and turned toward the door. "Hey, we talking to you, man," another one said, stepping in front of him. "You deaf or something?" Raj raised a hand nervously. "Please, not in here. Take it outside." The gang laughed. One shoved a candy bar into his pocket just to make a point. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he didn't move. He'd spent too many years controlling his anger, learning how to walk away. He brushed past them and stepped out into the street. That's when the first punch came. It wasn't much, sloppy, untrained. A cheap shot to the side of his face. Marcus staggered back, not because of the hit, but because of the shock. The boy actually thought this was a fight. The others joined in, swinging wild. Marcus tried to back up, hands raised. "Walk away, boys. This ain't what you want." But they didn't listen. They never do. One pulled out a knife, small, trembling in his grip. "You think you tough, huh? Big guy like you? Bet you ain't so big when you bleedin'." Marcus exhaled slowly. That was the moment it changed. The patience, the restraint gone. His hands, those same hands that once broke jaws in packed arenas, came alive. He slipped left, caught the knife hand, twisted, popped. The boy screamed. One clean punch to the ribs, another to the gut, and the kid dropped. The second one rushed in, wild and fast. Marcus sidestepped, used his momentum, and let him hit the ground face first. The others froze, eyes wide. Marcus didn't chase them. He didn't need to. He just looked at them, the calm in his stare louder than any threat. They ran. Raj ran out seconds later, panic all over his face. "Marcus. You okay?" Marcus wiped a small cut from his lip. "I'm fine." "You need to call police." Marcus shook his head. "No police. They'll just say I started it." He walked away, the street silent except for his footsteps. The night swallowed him back up, but something in him had woken, something he thought he buried years ago with his gloves. That night, as he washed the blood from his hands in his small apartment sink, he looked at his reflection. His face was calm, but his eyes were burning. He wasn't angry for what they did. He was angry for what they made him become again. And deep down, he knew they'd be back. Marcus spent the next few days trying to go back to normal. Work at the shop, a few hours at the gym, home before dark. But normal didn't feel right anymore. Not after that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw their faces, the smirks, the laughter, the knife trembling in that boy's hand. He had fought men twice their size and walked away untouched, but something about this was different. This wasn't about boxing. This was about pride. About respect. It started small. A broken window at his shop. A slashed tire. Then, a note taped to his door. "You think you're tough? We coming." Marcus crumpled it, tossed it aside. But he knew this was far from over. On the 4th night, he found spray paint on his wall. Coward. The letters dripped red like blood. He stared at it for a long time. Not because it scared him, but because it reminded him how quickly fear turns into anger in this neighborhood. He had once promised himself he'd never go down that path again, never use his fists outside the ring. But when people threaten your home, your peace, something primal wakes up. The next morning, Marcus visited the old boxing gym again. The same dusty air, the same creaking floors. He wasn't there to train others today, he was there to sharpen himself. Coach Reggie spotted him right away. "You look like a storm about to break, son." Marcus shrugged, wrapping his hands. "Storm's been brewing for a while." Reggie frowned. "You sure this is what you want? You walk back into that world, ain't no stepping out again." Marcus nodded once. "I'm not looking for glory, coach. I'm looking for peace. But if they want a fight, I'll give them one they'll never forget." Reggie handed him a towel, his eyes full of something between worry and pride. "Then you better remember who you are. You're not some street brawler. You're Marcus Green, 3-time Golden Gloves champ. Use that discipline." Marcus smiled. Faintly. "I never forgot." He started with footwork. Light, quick, smooth. Then came the bag. His punches echoed like thunder across the gym, boom, 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 until even the young fighters stopped and stared. Sweat rolled down his neck, veins bulged across his forearms, and those old scars across his knuckles gleamed under the flickering light. Every strike had a face behind it, every jab, a memory. The laughter. The knife. The word coward sprayed on his wall. When he finally stopped, Reggie handed him water. "So what's the plan?" Marcus looked at his reflection in the cracked mirror. "They think I'm prey. Time to show them I'm the hunter." That night, Marcus walked home the long way, through the same streets where they first jumped him. He wasn't looking for trouble, but he wasn't avoiding it either. His ears picked up the faint sounds, footsteps behind him, a whispered curse, a metallic click. He didn't turn. Not yet. He stopped beneath a flickering streetlight, the shadows long and deep around him. He took a slow breath, heart steady, eyes scanning the dark corners. "You boys done hiding?" he said quietly. The reply came from the alley, laughter. "You didn't think we'd forget, did you?" 4 shadows stepped out. Same crew. But this time, they weren't laughing like before. This time, they came ready. One had a bat. Another, a chain. The third had the same knife taped up from when Marcus dislocated his wrist. Marcus didn't move. He set his duffel bag down, unzipped it, and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. The leader sneered. "What's that, big man? Gonna pull a gun?" Marcus unwrapped the cloth slowly. It wasn't a gun. It was a pair of old boxing gloves, black leather, worn but clean. He slid them on, one by one, tightening the straps with deliberate calm. The gang laughed again, but there was a crack in their confidence now. "You serious? You think this a game?" Marcus's eyes lifted, cold and steady. "No game. Just a lesson." For a moment, the air went still, like the world itself was holding its breath. Then one of them lunged forward. Marcus stepped aside, his fist snapping out like lightning. The punch landed with a dull thud that echoed down the alley. The boy crumpled before he even knew what hit him. Another swung the chain. Marcus ducked, moved inside, and hit him in the ribs once, twice, each blow short, sharp, perfect. The chain hit the ground before its owner did. The leader hesitated. "You think this is over, man? We got people everywhere." Marcus walked toward him, slow and calm. "Then tell your people what happens when you come after a man who's done fighting." He stopped inches away, close enough that the leader could see the scars across Marcus's knuckles. "You see these? These aren't from the streets. They're from the ring. Every one of these lines a reminder of who I was and what I can do." The boy swallowed hard, his bat trembling in his grip. Marcus didn't have to throw another punch. The silence between them did the work. The leader dropped the bat, grabbed his friends, and they ran stumbling over themselves as they disappeared into the night. Marcus stood there alone, breathing heavy but steady. The gloves hung at his sides, streaked with dust. He looked up at the flickering streetlight and whispered, almost to himself, "It's never about how hard you can hit. It's about how much you can hold back." When he got home, he placed the gloves back in the cloth, set them on the table, and sat in the dark for a long time. Because deep down, he knew this wasn't finished yet. Beating them wasn't the end, it was only the beginning of something bigger. And for the first time in years, the fighter in him didn't feel retired anymore. The news spread fast. By the next morning, everyone on 8th Street knew what had happened in that alley. Word was, Marcus Green, the quiet mechanic who kept to himself, had dropped an entire gang in less than a minute. Some people whispered his name like he was a legend. Others said he was asking for trouble. The truth was somewhere in between. Marcus didn't want fame. He didn't want fear. All he wanted was to be left alone. But peace has a price, and sometimes you don't get to choose how you pay it. A few nights later, while closing the garage, Marcus noticed a black SUV parked across the street. The engine was off, but he could see movement inside. He knew enough to recognize a lookout. When he saw one, the gang wasn't done. They were regrouping, and this time, they were coming harder. He turned off the lights, locked the door, and walked home through the back alley, staying out of sight. His instincts were alive again, the same ones that used to guide him in the ring. Every sound, every flicker of light, every footstep, he felt it all. When he got home, he found his door slightly open. His chest tightened. He pushed it slowly and stepped inside. The living room was a mess. Drawers open, furniture overturned. On the wall, spray painted in red, were the words, "Round 2." He stood still, jaw tight, breathing through his nose. They had crossed a line now. This wasn't about pride or payback anymore, this was war. He picked up a picture frame from the floor. It was cracked, the glass broken, but the photo inside was still clear. Marcus standing with his younger brother, Jamal, after his first championship win. Jamal had died a few years later, wrong place, wrong time, another victim of a city that eats its own. Marcus had promised him he'd never go down that road of violence again. But looking at that photo now, he felt the same burn in his chest, the one that always came before a fight. The next day, Marcus met with Coach Reggie again. The old man listened quietly as Marcus explained everything. When he finished, Reggie sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. "You can't fight the streets, Marcus. You win one battle, they send 10 more." Marcus shook his head. "Then I'll fight 10. I'm not running again." Reggie leaned in closer, eyes sharp. "You're a fighter, son. But fighting ain't always about fists. Sometimes, it's about what you stand for. So ask yourself, what are you really fighting for this time? Revenge? Or redemption?" Marcus didn't answer right away. He looked down at his hands, the same hands that had earned him glory and the same hands that had ended a man's career when a punch went too far years ago. Those scars weren't just physical. They were reminders of what happens when you lose control. That question echoed in his mind the rest of the night. What am I fighting for? He sat by the window, watching the streetlights flicker, the world outside still moving like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. He had tried peace, and it got him hunted. He had tried patience, and it got his home violated. Maybe the only language they understood was strength. The next evening, Marcus walked back to the gym, not to train this time, but to talk to the young fighters. The same kids who used to look up to him were now whispering about the legend of what he'd done. One of them, a tall kid named Darius, looked up as Marcus entered. "Yo, Mr. Green. You really dropped 4 dudes with your bare hands?" Marcus smirked. "That's what they're saying, huh? Man, you gotta teach me that." Darius grinned, "Shadowboxing." Marcus shook his head. "No, son. I'm gonna teach you how not to be in that fight in the first place." He spent hours with them, showing real technique, footwork, discipline, control. The same lessons that had saved him time and again. He told them stories about the ring, about respect, about restraint. By the end of the night, even Reggie was nodding approvingly. But when Marcus walked out of the gym, the streetlights flickered again. The black SUV was back. This time, it wasn't parked. It was moving, slow and steady. He watched as the window rolled down. A voice called out, "You should have stayed in your lane, champ." Then the gunfire came. Marcus dove behind a parked car as bullets ripped through the quiet street. Glass shattered, metal screamed. His shoulder burned a graze, but nothing deep. The SUV sped off into the night, leaving smoke and silence behind. He sat there for a long time, chest heaving, blood dripping from his arm. For years, he'd lived in the shadow of who he used to be. Now, that shadow had come to life. He looked down at his trembling hands, then clenched them into fists. He had his answer now. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about ending it once and for all. Marcus spent the next few days planning. He didn't just want to fight them. He wanted them to understand why you don't pick on someone who has trained his entire life to strike precisely, to anticipate, to control every movement. He wasn't reckless, he was methodical. He tracked the gang's routines through the street cameras, the alleyways, and even by following their friends. Every movement, every stop, every weak point, he memorized it. He didn't tell anyone. Not Reggie, not the kids at the gym, not Raj at the corner store. This was personal. When night fell again, Marcus was ready. He wore black, gloves tucked into his duffel bag, and moved through the shadows like a ghost. The streets were empty, the city asleep, but Marcus felt every heartbeat, every sound, every shift of wind. The gang had a new hideout, an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. He could see the dim glow of lights through broken windows, hear their laughter, the metallic clang of chains and bottles. They thought they were safe. They were wrong. Marcus didn't rush. He circled, studied entrances and exits, and waited for the right moment. Patience was his ally. Hours passed. Then, just before midnight, he saw one of them step outside, smoke in hand, careless, confident. That was all he needed. He moved like a shadow, fast and silent, and tapped the first boy on the shoulder. When the gang turned, Marcus's gloves were on, his fists coiled like springs. The first punch landed, precise and devastating, and the boy crumpled like a rag doll. Chaos erupted inside the warehouse. Marcus moved like a predator, using every inch of his training. He wasn't angry. He was focused. One by one, they fell, a combination of swift jabs, counters, and footwork that left them dazed and disoriented. The leader tried to grab a pipe, but Marcus disarmed him with a single clean strike, sending the metal clattering across the floor. They were bigger than the boys in the streets, but Marcus was better. Faster. Smarter. Every scar on his knuckles told a story of discipline, every bruise on his body, a reminder that he could endure. By the time the first sirens wailed in the distance, probably neighbors calling the police, Marcus was gone, slipping into the night as quietly as he had entered. The gang was left in chaos, bleeding, bruised, and humiliated. They knew two things. 1. They had underestimated Marcus Green. 2. They would never try him again. The next morning, news spread across the city about a mysterious man who had single-handedly dismantled a notorious gang hideout. No one knew his name, but whispers called him the boxer, the ghost, and the man with the scarred hands. Marcus returned to his apartment, cleaned his gloves, and set them back on the table. He didn't feel triumphant. He didn't feel anger. He felt calm. Peaceful. He had defended himself, protected his home, and taught a lesson that wouldn't soon be forgotten. He called Coach Reggie that afternoon. "It's done," he said simply. Reggie chuckled softly. "I'm proud of you, son. But promise me one thing: no more fights in the streets. You've proven your point. Let that be enough." Marcus nodded. "It is enough." He hung up, walked to the window, and looked out over the city. The streets seemed quieter now, calmer. The threat was gone. And for the first time in a long time, Marcus felt like he could breathe again. He picked up a photograph of his younger brother, Jamal, and smiled. "I kept my promise, little man," he whispered. "I came back, and I did it right." The scars on his hands didn't hurt anymore. They were reminders, not threats. Reminders of a past that shaped him, of the discipline he had carried through life, and of the man he had become, a man who could face danger, protect what he loved, and walk away with honor intact. Life returned to its rhythm. Work, gym, home. Sometimes, at night, he would hear the faintest echo of footsteps outside or laughter carried on the wind, but he didn't flinch. The man with the scarred hands had faced fear, faced anger, and emerged stronger. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Marcus Green had earned his peace.